Hello, it's Chris the Frog of Sewer Spewer with yet another video in my series where I go through new music that was released out of Jojage or so-called Montreal in so-called Quebec in so-called Canada in the past month. And in this video, I'll be talking about releases that came out in the month of September 2025. Now, before we get to any of the music, I realize a lot of my comments that I make about the music have a lot to do with the vocals in these bands. That's just because I myself am a vocalist. I'm not really much of a musician, so I pick up more on vocals rather than, say, guitars or rhythm. So I'm speaking a lot about the musical elements that I'm the most familiar with, and for me, the vocals really make or break a band for me. But if things like guitar and drums or bass really stand out for me, then I will mention it. But especially in this video, I will be mentioning vocals a lot, so just be warned. Now, before we get into the releases that came out in September, I do need to mention one release that I completely forgot about in my last video. It was on my list, but when I was filming the video, I completely skipped over it without even knowing until I was editing, so I am going to mention it now, but it is coming from a new screamo band called Toevenexist, and this is their debut EP called Hymns. And this band has members of 1 Trillion Bees, who I've mentioned in a previous video. And even though the members of this band are very young and probably weren't around during that time when this kind of genre of music was at its peak, they really nailed down the sound of this genre. So good on them, and sorry for forgetting you last month. Okay, now we are moving into releases that came out in September, starting off with a new indie rock band called Bracelet and their debut EP, I Hear Bracelet, which was recorded at my old radio station, CJLO. And my first comment is about the vocals. Of course, I think they take a really interesting approach to the vocals where it's almost half talking and half melodic. I don't really know the best way to describe it, but I feel like it's very unique. Next, we have skate punk band Death by Dingo and their second album, What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Weird at Parties. And it has been 8 years since their last release, and this band doesn't play a lot of shows except for the occasional festival like Music for Cancer, which has a lot of other skate punk bands that sound very similar to this band. So if you're into that kind of music, then this is definitely worth checking out. Next up, we have a new album from folk punk artist Guilhem, who you might know from his previous pop punk project Lost Love, and he's also one of the main organizers for Pooza Fest. And this is his new album called A Good One, which was actually produced by Frank Turner. And I've been very fortunate to see Guilhem evolve over the years, going way back to his ska band in Rimouski before he moved to Montreal. And I really like what he's doing on this album and the kind of things that he's choosing to sing about, particularly a song that is about overcoming toxic masculinity that I really resonated with. Next up, we have a hardcore band called Just Us and their new 2-song release, Break the Cycle / Lost. And the members of this band are made up of former members of a band called Uniform Justice who were active in the early 2000s. So they have that early 2000s hardcore sound while bringing in some more modern influences from the current hardcore scene. Next, we have melodic punk band Small Leap and their debut album, Gimme Space. And I want to thank the band for emailing me to tell me about this release. I'm sorry that I never wrote back to you, but I am getting around to talking about your album. So yeah, thanks for sending that email. And even though the overall sound of this band is quite upbeat, the lyrics on this album have this underlying sadness to it. And it makes me think of bands like Off With Their Heads in that they deal with feelings of isolation and depression and feeling of loss. After that, we have a new post-hardcore trio called Paresis, and they're split with an Ontario emo band called Fair and Keep, and the name of this split is called Furnace Without a Face. And I'm going to speak particularly to Paresis' side of this split, but I really like how they have lots of peaks and valleys. They have like these moments that are a bit more calm with these ambient type vocals, and then those build to these very high tension screaming parts, which I really like. But also one thing that really stands out to me is the sound of the bass in this band. I just think it sounds really cool, so yeah, give them a listen. After that, we have a psychedelic rock band called Magma Gamma and their new EP called Leah. And I get a very Pink Floyd vibe from this band, but I think what sets them apart from a lot of other psychedelic rock bands are the synths and these really cool vocals from the singer Amélie Pitre. After that, we have melodic post-hardcore band Spitehouse and their second album called Desertion, which is their debut on the record label Pure Noise. And once again, I'm talking about the vocals, but Maxime Lajoie has a great voice that's perfect for this kind of genre, which is gruff yet still vulnerable, and it's just perfect because it carries a lot of emotion with it and it really hits at the heart of the songs. Next up, we have a post-punk band called Videoville and their new album Post Burnout, which is completely instrumental except for maybe a phone conversation on one of the tracks, but it really has this kind of cinematic element to it that really makes you feel like you're listening to a soundtrack of a low-budget indie film. So as somebody who doesn't normally engage with instrumental music just because, as I mentioned, I really focus on vocals, I still think there's a lot of cool moments on this EP. Next up, we have a new metal punk band called Demonstench and their debut 2-song demo, Taste the Stench. Now, there isn't a lot of information about this band, I think just because they're new, but judging from pictures, I can tell that they are some older gentlemen, and just listening to their music, I can tell that they are bringing a lot of old school influences to their sound. I'm trying to avoid the sun rays right now, but it's just slowly creeping up my face. But the next release is from garage punk band Dirty Cheetah and their second album, Buzz Cult, which is somewhat of a concept album all about these coping mechanisms that we indulge in to break up the mundanity of everyday life and the current climate that we're living through. But these songs are just very, very catchy. And there's one song that I really like where they switch from English to French to then Spanish. And it's just a lot of fun, and this was one of my more anticipated albums from last month. Next, we have post-punk band Antenna 93 and their new 2-song release, Jack in the Green, which is a follow-up to their EP, which they released earlier this year and was released ahead of their appearance at Pop Montreal. It's more really one song on this release because the second song is a bit of an ambient track. It has these nature sounds as well as some acoustic guitars and a violin. But it's really Jack and the Green that is like the main track of this release. After that, we have progressive sludge metal band Ashbreather and their album La Grande Bouffe, which is a concept album about a subterranean society that slowly cannibalizes itself until they are left with just one person who decides to eat himself. And I want to give a shout out to Colin McAndrew, who just does incredible drum work on this release, particularly on the song Pulse, which is about that remaining survivor. And the drums really focus on that like heartbeat pulse of that character while also like straying and going into some very weird places. So very interesting what they do on this record, and yeah, it's really an experience listening to it. Continuing on with these weird yet interesting bands, we have doom pop band Morte and their album Serment Hermitage. And there's a lot of weirdness to this album. Like, even though the songs are simple, they have like these very discordant melodies as if the guitars were being played out of tune. And the vocals like seem like there's something slightly off about it, and at some point there are some harsh vocals, but they sound very distant, almost like they're being like whisper screamed. So yeah, it's a very interesting listen, to say the least. Next up, we have hard rock band Midnight Crawl and their new EP Love Songs for Deadbeats. And going into this, I wasn't expecting much just based on the genre that they decide to describe themselves with, hard rock. It doesn't really give me much to work on, but I find that the band aren't really afraid to go very gritty and loud, and they have these guitars that are super fuzzy and squealing at points. So I was actually very surprised by how much I liked this EP. Next, we have another psychedelic rock band called Superkaleidogram 800 and their new album called Popsicle Land, which just has a super mellow vibe to it. And if you're looking to just calm yourself down and just chill out, then yeah, throw this on. And that's it for Montreal music that came out in September. Thank you so much for watching this video if you've gotten to this point. And I've also made a YouTube playlist of most of these bands who have music on YouTube. Some of them don't because they are exclusive on Bandcamp. But if you want to go listen to some of those songs, then I'm going to be putting a link up on here somewhere and also in the description of this episode. And if you want more content from me, then be sure to follow me on social media on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And every week I am dropping videos and listings of all the shows happening in Montreal for that week. And if you like what I do, if you like these videos, if you like what I'm doing every week for the local scene here in Montreal, then please consider donating to my Patreon by going to patreon.com/sewerspewer. You can sign up for only $2 a month, and the money that you will be donating to me will be used to buy Bandcamp songs. So technically I am giving back to the artists. So technically your money is going towards independent artists. So that's something worth financing. And while you're here on YouTube, consider subscribing to my channel and liking this video. And I will be back next month talking about releases that came out in October. I already have a few on my list that I'm really excited to listen to. So stay tuned for that. And until next month, ribbit ribbit.